In Konoha the opening game plays as Jikuni Yuanichi Chapter 651-676. Chapter 651. And here, Sun Wukong was also stopped by the traps set by Doctor Who, because he couldn't come here. I'm really sorry that I can't avenge you personally. Sun Wukong's tone was full of frustration. Obviously, the mechanisms in front of him didn't look that difficult, but when he wanted to break through, it seemed that countless hands were blocking him. Thinking of this, Sun Wukong's mood became particularly depressed, but Chi-Chi patted his shoulder and said indifferently, "It's okay, we can break these things together." Chi-Chi looked at him and smiled. Perhaps because he got the support of his beloved, Sun Wukong didn't think it was so difficult. At this moment, Sun Wukong gritted his teeth. Although Bei was blocked by these traps, it didn't prevent him from rushing out of this trap in one go. This was just a small difficulty. How could he really be stopped? Thinking of this, Sun Wukong couldn't help but feel happy for this. After dealing with these super soldiers, Seiki Kusuo also showed a proud look on his face. He looked at the mysterious doctor with great disdain. With your means, you still want to deal with me. Why don't you go back? Reincarnate a few more times and see if you can be reborn into a good one. After Seiki Kusuo's words and questions came out, the mysterious doctor's face became extremely ugly. He was so ashamed that he wanted to rush forward and tear him into pieces. Perhaps he had never thought that someone would do such disgusting things like Seiki Kusuo, so when Doctor Who looked at Seiki Kusuo, there was only deep hatred in his eyes. Seeing the look on Doctor Who's face, Seiki Kusuo smiled very calmly. He walked over step by step, and it seemed that he was going to attack Doctor Who immediately, but he didn't expect that Doctor Who clenched his fists at this moment. Seiki Kusuo looked at Doctor Who and just smiled at him very calmly. The next second, this guy turned into a Super Saiyan. Seeing his look, Seiki Kusuo's eyes were full of contempt, and then he said sarcastically, "Do you think you can solve the problem by doing this? A weakling like you will be completely crushed by me sooner or later." Seiki Kusuo was telling the truth, and he was full of confidence, but Doctor Who was so angry that he gritted his teeth. He looked at Seiki Kusuo and suddenly yelled, "Die, you stupid ass!" The doctor said as he rushed over. His fangs and claws looked terrifying, but in fact, these did not cause any deterrence to Seiki Kusuo. But on the other side, Sun Wukong and Chi-Chi were still dealing with the mechanisms in front of them, which stumped them. Seiki Kusuo had already started fighting with the doctor, and they were still dealing with the mechanisms here. Sun Wukong was also anxious about this, and his face became extremely ugly. He looked at Chi-Chi and then said helplessly, "I think I really can't help you get revenge this time." Even the momentum he exuded was low, and the mechanisms and traps in front of him were even the most ordinary. But if he didn't give himself enough courage and confidence, how could he break through? Chi-Chi looked at Sun Wukong and shook her head, without saying much. Sun Wukong must figure it out by himself, so that he can get out of the predicament. Chapter 652. But on the other side, Seiki Kusuo quickly entered the sage mode. Even though he seemed to be suppressed by Doctor Who at the beginning, now that he turned on this mode, he used his magic to crush Doctor Who very thoroughly. Doctor Who was not his opponent at all. At this moment, Seiki Kusuo saw him begging desperately, and there was only disapproval in his eyes. "Weren't you very arrogant just now? Why are you turning into a fool now? Don't beg me if you have the ability. Even if he becomes a Super Saiyan, so what? He can still fight 5-on-1. How could he be his opponent with his physique? In terms of physical strength, no one can beat Seiki Kusuo, and the same is true for brainpower, not to mention at this moment of wit." At this moment, Seiki Kusuo looked at Doctor Who and found the ugliness on his face, and he did not hesitate to insult him. "I advise you to surrender now and stop fighting me, otherwise the outcome will not be that simple." He knew that he had not completely conquered Doctor Who, so he might still give him a fatal blow next. Now Seiki Kusuo looked at Doctor Who with melancholy in his eyes. But the other party stared at him with a bit of weirdness in his eyes. Before Seiki Kusuo could react, Doctor Who suddenly spoke. "Where did you learn these things now? If you are willing to tell me, I can give you those robots and some technological equipment." His face was full of seriousness, and he seemed to be ready to learn everything from Seiki Kusuo. But when Seiki Kusuo heard this, he felt puzzled and stared at him and asked impatiently. Do you think this kind of thing will belong to you? Why don't you dream? When Seiki Kusuo asked the question, Doctor Who's expression became extremely complicated. He lowered his brows and looked at Seiki Kusuo without saying a word. If he had known that Seiki Kusuo was so difficult to deal with, he should have thought of more traps instead of letting Seiki Kusuo come to his side easily. However, no one had ever thought that Seiki Kusuo would actually know the Flying Thunder God technique. What exactly is this thing? He didn't know at all. After considering these, Doctor Who could only grit his teeth and hold on as much as possible. Zero, please give me flowers. Looking at Doctor Who's resistance, Seiki Kusuo just felt very funny. Don't bother anymore. You are really not my opponent. If you surrender now, maybe everything will have a chance. Seiki Kusuo said this seriously. Doctor Who felt very uncomfortable when he heard it. He gritted his teeth and trembled all over in anger. He looked at Seiki Kusuo and couldn't say a word. Zero. But on the other side, Sun Wukong finally broke through the demon in his heart, and the traps in front of him were completely removed by him. Chi-Chi has been standing by, watching Sun Wukong, and couldn't help cheering and applauding for Sun Wukong. Such a thing is really worth celebrating. Chi-Chi was still worried that Sun Wukong couldn't get out, but she didn't expect that Sun Wukong solved it so quickly. Thinking of this, Chi-Chi looked at Sun Wukong, with only excitement on her face. The two of them hurried to where Seiki Kusuo was, but at this moment, Seiki Kusuo just waved his fist, and Doctor Who was knocked away by his fist. Seeing his miserable appearance, Seiki Kusuo also had a headache. Work. Chapter 653. He sighed condescendingly, staring at Doctor Who, and couldn't help but say, I advise you to surrender now, and don't try to leave here anymore. As Seiki Kusuo said this, he smiled at him. Seiki Kusuo had already angered Doctor Who when he said these words. A rabbit that is angry will grit its teeth, let alone Doctor Who at this moment. But at this moment, choosing to retreat and harm 090 may not solve the problem, so only facing it head-on can deal with the problem. After considering these, Seiki Kusuo stared at Doctor Who with only calmness in his eyes. But at this moment, Doctor Who thought of an excellent way. If he didn't escape now, when would he? Could he really die at the hands of Seiki Kusuo? Thinking of this, Doctor Who prepared to turn around and run away without hesitation, and also summoned a large number of his robots. Only unfortunately, those robots could not cause any harm to Seiki Kusuo. And most importantly, Doctor Who's behavior made Seiki Kusuo feel extremely ridiculous. The spaces next to him had already been sealed by Seiki Kusuo. During the fight between the two of them, Seiki Kusuo had unknowingly laid a net of heaven and earth. Now, looking at Doctor Who, Seiki Kusuo's eyes were only calm. He was even too lazy to pay attention to this guy. When he saw him yelling and trying to break the seal, Seiki Kusuo just thought it was ridiculous. He shook his head and sighed as he looked at Doctor Who. Your strength is just like this. I thought you could play at a real level. What Seiki Kusuo said was the truth. After hearing it, Doctor Who's face turned extremely ugly. He frowned and looked at Seiki Kusuo without saying a word, but even so, when Seiki Kusuo looked at him, there was only calmness in his eyes. Before Doctor Who could react, Seiki Kusuo had rushed forward and grabbed his collar, intending to give him a fatal blow. Unexpectedly, Doctor Who was defeated by him. Seeing Doctor Who's look, Seiki Kusuo laughed immediately, but before he could laugh for long, Doctor Who interrupted him directly. You have only won temporarily. Do you really think you can control my life next? His question puzzled Seiki Kusuo, who frowned. He didn't expect that the next second, this guy would use a secret method to fight him to the death. 0. Seeing him fighting desperately, Seiki Kusuo suddenly sighed and sighed involuntarily at him. You are an old man, but you are still fighting hard here. Is it really interesting for you to do this? When Seiki Kusuo asked the question, Doctor Who was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He covered his chest and didn't say anything for a long time. He stared at Seiki Kusuo with only malice in his eyes. But when Seiki Kusuo looked at him, he was extremely calm and didn't want to say anything. Facing his tricks, Seiki Kusuo countered them. Doctor Who gradually couldn't get any benefits from Seiki Kusuo, and later realized that he was no match for Seiki Kusuo. Seeing his look, Seiki Kusuo couldn't help but persuade him. I think you'd better stay now. Should we give up immediately? After all, it is not a good idea to continue to resist. Chapter 654. What Seiki Kusuo said was the truth. Doctor Who's face turned pale. At this time, Doctor Who was ready to fight Seiki Kusuo because he had overdrawn his life. Although he was repeatedly frustrated by Seiki Kusuo, this did not prevent him from giving up. He gritted his teeth and tried his best. He tried his best to defeat Seiki Kusuo, but it was a pity that he was ready to fight Seiki Kusuo. Sun Wukong appeared without hesitation. Sun Wukong stared at Doctor Who and said with a smile on his face, "Just fight with me, don't fight with Seiki Kusuo." When Doctor Who heard what he said, he looked at Seiki Kusuo and said arrogantly, "Why don't you tell me directly if you are afraid now? Anyway, find someone to fight me. You are too spineless, aren't you?" As Doctor Who said this, he covered his mouth and laughed secretly, as if this was an extremely funny thing. But in fact, Sun Wukong did this just because he wanted to avenge Chi-Chi. Seeing Doctor Who's look, Sun Wukong spoke without hesitation. "Stop talking nonsense here. You dare to poison Chi-Chi, and then give me your life." Chi-Chi stood by and saw Sun Wukong's look, and his eyes flashed with some emotion and excitement. He suddenly clenched his fists, and then waved his hands and said, "Come on, Sun Wukong, you are the best." He cheered and clenched his fists while looking at Doctor Who. Kiki's eyes were also filled with hatred. If it weren't for this guy, how could he have fallen to such a bad state? When she thought of how uncomfortable she was, Kiki wanted to go into battle herself, but at this time, Seiki Kusuo had already stepped aside and looked at Doctor Who and said, "I believe your next fate will not be much simpler than fighting me." After Seiki Kusuo said this, he took the initiative to leave the battlefield. Seeing Seiki Kusuo leave, Doctor Who was even more angry. The angrier he was, the calmer Seiki Kusuo was. When Kiki saw Seiki Kusuo like that, she shouted to Sun Wukong with a face full of anxiety, "Hurry up and start. If you can't beat him, you can ask Seiki Kusuo to come and support you." Unfortunately, when Chi-Chi said this, Sun Wukong shook his head without hesitation, looking at his face with a decisive refusal. "Resources are not needed. I believe that with my ability, I can still defeat him, and a real man will never need this thing." Sun Wukong clenched his fists while speaking, looking confident, and Seiki Kusuo was also looking forward to his next performance. When Doctor Who saw him like that, he sneered, "Do you know what it means that I am overdrawing my life to fight you now?" Sun Wukong shook his head. He didn't know, and he didn't want to understand, but he didn't expect that Sun Wukong would speak directly at this moment. "That means that without the help of Seiki Kusuo, you will only die." This is Sun Wukong. Hearing his independent words, he gritted his teeth in anger. He decisively used the fourth stage of Super Saiyan, and so he started fighting with Doctor Who. Although Doctor Who's moves were weird, Sun Wukong could still think of other ways to deal with them. Chapter 655. Sun Wukong calmed his emotions with a calm face. Try to keep yourself in a balanced water surface as much as possible, instead of having too many ups and downs because of this guy. But during their fight, Doctor Who also saw Sun Wukong's weakness. He chased Sun Wukong's weakness and kept hitting. Although Sun Wukong's current problems are indeed difficult for him to deal with, but these things are nothing to Doctor Who. Looking at Sun Wukong, Doctor Who became more and more arrogant. "I advise you to surrender as soon as possible. You are not my opponent at all. Look at what you look like now, like a piece of trash, just like me at the beginning." His words were particularly disgusting, and he even said that he also told the story of poisoning Chi-Chi. Hearing these words, Sun Wukong's face became extremely ugly. He was so angry that he clenched his teeth and looked at Doctor Who for a long time without saying a word, but even though he was defeated repeatedly, he hurriedly stood up and did not choose to retreat. Retreating would not solve the problem. He must now face the challenge. Thinking of this, Sun Wukong's eyes showed some excitement. Before Doctor Who could react, Sun Wukong had already rushed in front of him. Then he beat Doctor Who. Seeing Sun Wukong's appearance, Doctor Who just felt extremely funny, even though he was still struggling when fighting with Sun Wukong at this moment. But he could guarantee that he would be able to crush Sun Wukong to the ground soon, because Sun Wukong could not maintain the Super Saiyan 4 state for a long time. Thinking of this, there was only a calmness on his face. Even though he was beaten by Sun Wukong, Doctor Who still spoke to him. To be honest, your strength is just like this. I thought you were very capable diaresis. As he spoke, he raised his eyebrows at Sun Wukong, and saw God. Seeing Doctor Who's look, Sun Wukong was so angry that he gritted his teeth. But Chi-Chi, who was standing next to him, couldn't help but speak and encouraged him. You must hold back. This moment is the most important. I believe he is definitely not your opponent. There were tears in Chi-Chi's eyes, flashing at Sun Wukong. Seeing him like that, she nodded decisively. Kiki Kusuo just stood by and watched quietly. He always felt that Sun Wukong might have some problems this time, just as he expected. During the fight with Doctor Who, Sun Wukong accidentally lost his Super Saiyan form. When Sun Wukong quickly adjusted himself, Doctor Who had already caught his flaw. Seeing Sun Wukong's miserable look, Kiki Kusuo rushed over without hesitation and rescued him. The moment Kiki Kusuo saved Sun Wukong's face was full of distress. He covered his face and heard the laughter of Doctor Who. He couldn't swallow it at all. He couldn't accept the moment of his incompetence. Seeing him like that, Seiki Kusuo patted his shoulder without hesitation to calm him down. You just wait here patiently. This guy just temporarily overdrawn his life. Otherwise, how could he be your opponent? Seiki Kusuo was telling the truth. Sun Wukong nodded immediately after hearing it, but Doctor Who spoke very arrogantly at this time. Chapter 656. Forget it. Even if I didn't overdraw all my life and fought him, he would not be my opponent. People like him don't deserve to stand here. It was right that Kiki was poisoned by him. Doctor Who thought in his heart, and then prepared to say this. But at this time, Sun Wukong was so angry that he gritted his teeth. He couldn't accept such humiliation. He pushed away Seiki Kusuo's hand and looked at Seiki Kusuo very seriously. Let me fight him. Even if I die, I am willing. I want to avenge Chi-Chi. I don't want to. Sun Wukong said this impulsively. Logically speaking, it is a good thing for Sun Wukong to have such a heart. It's just that he went to fight with Doctor Who. If he really died, it is definitely not just Chi-Chi who is sad. Even Seiki Kusuo will feel uncomfortable for this. Otherwise, he would not have rushed up and tried his best to save Chi-Chi's life. Thinking of this, Seiki Kusuo's face became extremely weird. He didn't speak for a long time. Sun Wukong saw Seiki Kusuo's look, but he said without showing any weakness. Just let me try. Even if I die, I am willing. At least I am fighting for the one I love. His tone was full of seriousness. No one could refuse this, but Seiki Kusuo couldn't help shaking his head when he heard it. He was helpless and couldn't agree at this moment. He couldn't let Sun Wukong die in vain, and Doctor Who was still provoking Sun Wukong, which was what Seiki Kusuo was most dissatisfied with. Looking at Doctor Who, Seiki Kusuo rushed over without thinking. At this moment, he took Doctor Who and instantly transferred to a space. Seeing Seiki Kusuo's quick movements, Doctor Who's face turned pale. He stared at Seiki Kusuo with wide eyes, then looked at the surrounding environment and said, Let Sun Wukong come out to fight me. You have to pick the soft persimmons to pick. People like Sun Wukong who are easy to deal with can be bullied by him casually. If he really faced Seiki Kusuo head-on, he might not be able to win. Thinking of these, Doctor Who's face became a little ugly, but Seiki Kusuo stared at Doctor Who and couldn't help but sneered and said, Do you think you have this chance? You'd better die now and stop struggling. This will be more satisfying for you. Seiki Kusuo never thought that Sun Wukong would not be able to beat Doctor Who, but this was expected. Sun Wukong's current ability was still too poor. Seiki Kusuo looked at Doctor Who and said condescendingly, If you have the ability, put away your airs. Seiki Kusuo raised his eyebrows at him, but Doctor Who heard it as if he heard a big joke, and he refuted it without hesitation. What qualifications do you have to make your request to me? As soon as he said this, Seiki Kusuo attacked him without hesitation. On the battlefield in the different space, Doctor Who was beaten back by Seiki Kusuo. No one had thought that this situation would actually happen. At this moment, Seiki Kusuo also saw the shock on Doctor Who's face. He laughed calmly and stared at Doctor Who and couldn't help but say. Chapter 657. Die. At this moment, Doctor Who was completely defeated by Seiki Kusuo. Seeing him lying on the ground, Seiki Kusuo was relieved. At least it was over, and a big thing in his heart was relieved. While Seiki Kusuo was happy about this, he also hurried forward to check on Doctor Who's situation. He was also worried that this guy would pretend to be dead. But what Seiki Kusuo didn't expect was that he kicked Doctor Who a few times, but Doctor Who still didn't react. Seeing Doctor Who's look, Seiki Kusuo finally reacted. Here it comes, this guy is really dead. In response to this, Seiki Kusuo couldn't help but want to laugh. Looking at Doctor Who, Seiki Kusuo sighed condescendingly. I thought you were so capable, but I didn't expect you to be just like this. At this point, Doctor Who's face became extremely ugly. But Seiki Kusuo was extremely calm when he looked at him. Seeing his eyes roll back, Seiki Kusuo finally confirmed that he was really dead, but at this moment a black shadow suddenly appeared in Doctor Who's body. Seiki Kusuo looked at the black shadow, his eyes full of strangeness. He couldn't figure out when this thing appeared. And even what was wrong with him. No one could give Seiki Kusuo an explanation. Seiki Kusuo's face became extremely strange, and as for this black shadow, it decisively controlled Doctor Who's body. Seiki Kusuo watched Doctor Who stand up, his face full of complexity. Before launching a fatal attack on him, Seiki Kusuo saw Doctor Who running to the other side. He seemed to know how to leave this space. Chimu Kusuo's face became a little ugly. What on earth was this black shadow? Where did it come from? He didn't know at all. Chimu Kusuo didn't know all about him. Now he was like a lamb to be slaughtered. There was no chance or room for choice. Even so, Chimu Kusuo gritted his teeth and chased after him decisively. Doctor Who had been trying to leave this space. And Chimu Kusuo kept attacking him, but this guy's speed became extremely sharp, and he seemed to be able to successfully avoid many of Chimu Kusuo's attacks. Chimu Kusuo frowned and stared at Doctor Who, his eyes full of complexity. Zero, please give me flowers. But the next second Doctor Who had found a way to leave, and he decisively ran away from this space. Chimu Kusuo saw him leave like this, and his face had already become extremely ugly. He could only quickly catch up, and then shouted anxiously. Who are you? Why are you staying in his body? Chimu Kusuo did not think that this shadow was Doctor Who. In his cognition, this shadow was very likely to have a direct connection with Doctor Who. But it was not him. When thinking about this, Chimu Kusuo's face became extremely ugly. He frowned, and did not speak for a long time. He kept following Doctor Who, and he followed relentlessly. Doctor Who frequently looked back at Chimu Kusuo, but his body softened. It was obvious that the shadow had been controlling him. Chimu Kusuo frowned, and his face was full of complexity. We must not let this guy run away. No one knows what his purpose is. When thinking of this, Chimu Kusuo clenched his fists and chased after him without hesitation. Work. Chapter 658. It's a pity that chasing after him doesn't seem to have much effect. This shadow can think of other ways to leave. Seiki Kusuo frowned, his face full of complexity. He couldn't help but sigh softly. At this time, Seiki Kusuo also left the space battlefield and came outside, but something unexpected happened to Seiki Kusuo. This mysterious doctor didn't want to escape, but quickly flew to Pandora Planet 090. Logically speaking, he was equivalent to throwing himself into a trap by doing this. What exactly did he want to do? Seiki Kusuo couldn't figure it out. Seiki Kusuo frowned, his face full of complexity, but at this moment, he quickly came to Sun Wukong and Chi-Chi. He was afraid that the mysterious doctor would attack the two of them. When Seiki Kusuo came over, Sun Wukong was still lying on the ground. However, he had recovered. Seeing Seiki Kusuo, Sun Wukong came forward with great joy, but there was a hint of gloom in his eyes. In fact, it is a very sad thing not to be able to avenge the one you love. Thinking of this, Sun Wukong also secretly hated his incompetence. When Chi-Mu Kusuo saw Sun Wukong's look, he patted his shoulder and said, "You have to remember that what Chi-Mu needs is not these male chauvinism. He just wants to be with him all the time. I also hope that you don't do things that let him down." Chi-Mu Kusuo earnestly warned him. His words were a little inexplicable. Sun Wukong frowned when he heard them. Even Chi-Mu was the same. While the two of them were stunned, Chi-Mu Kusuo also told them about the situation of Doctor Who. When the two of them heard it, they were obviously very surprised. Seeing the shock on their faces, Chi-Mu Kusuo's face became extremely ugly. At this time, Chi-Mu Kusuo suddenly felt a gust of wind flying over. This gust of wind blew over, and at the same time, Chi-Mu Kusuo also saw Doctor Who flying towards Sun Wukong. Seeing Sun Wukong stunned in place, he didn't react. Chi-Mu Kusuo was also inexplicably blown away by the wind, and he was knocked away by the wind. Seiki Kusuo immediately clenched his teeth. He finally understood the purpose of this black shadow. It was nothing more than wanting to take over Sun Wukong's body. At this moment, Sun Wukong looked at the black shadow in front of him. He was a little confused. What was going on with this thing? Zero. But when looking at Seiki Kusuo, Sun Wukong turned to Seiki Kusuo. He said with a smile, "Don't worry about me, I'm fine, I can survive this disaster." Sun Wukong raised his eyebrows at Chi-Mu Kusuo while speaking. Seeing Sun Wukong's look, Chi-Mu Kusuo also showed some helplessness on his face. This guy has not realized the seriousness of the matter until now, and still naively thinks that all this can be easily solved. When thinking about these, Chi-Mu Kusuo's mood became extremely complicated. He couldn't help shaking his head. The black shadow in front of him rushed directly over. At this time, Chi-Chi had decisively taken Sun Wukong to other places. The innate sensitivity made him realize that something was wrong. It was only appropriate to take Sun Wukong away. Chi-Chi thought so in her heart. Chi-Mu Kusuo saw Chi-Chi's actions and immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Thanks to Chi-Chi for delaying time for him. Otherwise, he might not be able to find an opportunity now. Chapter 659. Chi-Mu Kusuo hurried forward to help the two of them. However, at this moment, Seiki Kusuo found that it was too late for him, and the black shadow was almost on Sun Wukong's face. He could only use the Flying Thunder God technique to get to Sun Wukong's side. If it was a little later, Sun Wukong might have been possessed, and Seiki Kusuo didn't know how to solve it. Fortunately, Seiki Kusuo arrived in time. Seiki Kusuo looked at Sun Wukong and patted his shoulder without hesitation. "Don't worry, there's no problem." When Seiki Kusuo said this, Sun Wukong laughed. But at this time, Sun Wukong saw the black shadow in front of him rushing over. Perhaps because Seiki Kusuo stayed by his side, the black shadow was shocked. When Sun Wukong was puzzled by this, he didn't expect that Seiki Kusuo would directly use the sealing technique. At this time, Sun Wukong looked at him and said in great confusion, "What on earth is going on?" His face was full of surprise, but when Seiki Kusuo heard what he said, he smiled perfunctorily. "I don't know either. This is the black shadow I told you about. What on earth is going on with him? I can't explain it either." Seiki Kusuo frowned, his face full of helplessness. He also wanted to give himself an answer, but at this moment, even he couldn't take care of it. Let alone give an answer. Thinking of this, Seiki Kusuo's mood became extremely complicated. Seeing Seiki Kusuo's look, Sun Wukong couldn't help but speak. "Let me guess, could this guy be the puppet that controls Doctor Who?" As soon as he said this, Seiki Kusuo shook his head. It is undeniable that there is such a possibility, but the specific situation remains to be investigated. And it is impossible for Seiki Kusuo to draw a conclusion so quickly. Seeing Seiki Kusuo's look, Sun Wukong's face showed some helplessness. He suddenly patted Seiki Kusuo on the shoulder and spoke. If this matter is really difficult to solve, why don't you let me go? He thought that the other side was heading here, and Seiki Kusuo might not be able to handle it. He didn't want to burden Seiki Kusuo anymore. After all, he knew that he had caused Seiki Kusuo countless troubles as a troublemaker. Thinking of these, Sun Wukong's mood suddenly became extremely low. When Seiki Kusuo used the sealing technique, he was extremely impatient when he saw Sun Wukong's look and yelled. Don't take yourself too seriously. Do you really think you are a role? How could I do such a thing for you? Seiki Kusuo said while clenching his fists. Hearing Seiki Kusuo's words, Sun Wukong widened his eyes and looked at Seiki Kusuo with some confusion. But because Seiki Kusuo kept a straight face, Sun Wukong didn't say anything else he wanted to say. Seeing Sun Wukong's look, Seiki Kusuo was too lazy to explain too much to him. At this moment, Seiki Kusuo looked at the shadow in front of him and launched a fatal attack on him without hesitation. While launching the attack, Seiki Kusuo also tried to seal the shadow, but in fact he only sealed Doctor Who. But the shadow thought of a way to escape directly. Chapter 660. Seiki Kusuo couldn't understand why he had a way to leave this place, and Seiki Kusuo's face became extremely ugly. Sun Wukong saw Seiki Kusuo's look and patted his shoulder again. Don't blame yourself too much. There are some things we can't decide. What is the origin of this thing? We don't know that you have done very well now. He comforted Seiki Kusuo seriously. When Seiki Kusuo heard these words, he was too lazy to pay attention to him, then rolled his eyes and quickly solved the problem of Doctor Who. Seiki Kusuo has completely solved the problem of Doctor Who, and now they have left here directly without staying here any longer. Seiki Kusuo and Sun Wukong also came to the space station. The three of them stood here, waiting for the special class spaceship to pick them up. When the captain appeared in front of everyone, Sun Wukong could even see the helplessness and headache that flashed across his face. He seemed to be a little disgusted with himself. When Sun Wukong thought of this in his mind, he looked at the captain. Wukong also asked without hesitation. Don't you want to see me? When the captain asked such a question, his face became a little ugly. He shook his head hurriedly, looked at Sun Wukong, and couldn't help laughing. Why do you think so? How could I not want to see you? While driving his spaceship, the captain hurriedly adjusted his state after the three of them came up one after another. If Seiki Kusuo saw that he was not very good to Sun Wukong, it would be bad if Seiki Kusuo directly replaced him. Thinking of this, the captain's attitude towards them became polite. While the captain was polite, Seiki Kusuo couldn't help but sighed softly when he looked at him. I hope everything is as simple as the captain said. Sun Wukong saw the captain's appearance, but he didn't hesitate to come over and chat with him. There are many things in the cockpit, all it was Sun Wukong, who wanted to know. Sun Wukong asked questions here and there, and Seiki Kusuo saw Sun Wukong's appearance, and he felt a headache for a while. He looked at the captain and decisively told him the next destination. They were going to Alpha Planet now. When the captain heard Seiki Kusuo's words, he nodded immediately, indicating that there was no order. At this time, Sun Wukong just stayed beside the captain, looking at the cabin in front of him, and insisted that the captain teach him. The captain saw Sun Wukong's appearance, and he was also very headache, because Seiki Kusuo stood beside him. He couldn't drive Sun Wukong out, so he could only look at Sun Wukong and said with a forced smile. Then you look at me carefully, and I will teach you how to operate it now. While the captain was speaking, he taught Sun Wukong some instruments, including some of the most basic operations. He didn't want Sun Wukong to learn some inferior things from him, run out to drive other people's spaceships, and kill others. He couldn't do such a thing. He was an extremely responsible person. In this situation, he also knew how to deal with it. Seeing the captain's attentive look, Sun Wukong nodded from time to time and said with satisfaction. Very good, it seems that your teaching ability is really very good. Chapter 661. Sun Wukong laughed as he spoke. Seeing Sun Wukong's expression, the captain decisively let Sun Wukong try to drive the spaceship himself. Sun Wukong came to the cockpit with a cautious look on his face. Seeing his expression, Seiki Kusuo couldn't help but smile. At this time, Seiki Kusuo also left here. He had other things to sort out. Seeing Seiki Kusuo leave, the captain's face fell instantly. He stared at Sun Wukong and watched every operation of Sun Wukong. Whenever there was a mistake, he would treat it with a stern attitude. Since Seiki Kusuo was not here, why should he pretend? What's more, Sun Wukong's family, the guy is stupid to begin with, and he can't learn no matter how much he is taught. In this case, there is no need for him to be friendly to Sun Wukong. When considering these, his attitude towards Sun Wukong became more and more strict. Sun Wukong was concentrating on learning how to fly a spaceship and didn't pay attention to this at all. After Sun Wukong roughly mastered it, he looked at the captain and raised his hands and cheered with great joy. This is really great, I finally learned it. Seeing Sun Wukong like that, the captain was slightly satisfied. At least he had learned some of the basics that he should have learned. He was not that stupid. If he was really that stupid, the captain thought about it and thought that he might explode at this moment. But at this moment, the captain did not care too much about Sun Wukong, but led Sun Wukong to continue to learn more profound things. While educating Sun Wukong about these things, he also tried his best to tell Sun Wukong about some of his experiences. In this way, Sun Wukong's experience can be more full, at least Sun Wukong can learn more. When considering these, the captain looked at Sun Wukong with a smile in his eyes. But Sun Wukong and the captain looked at each other with a little embarrassment. He pointed to the very bright spaceship in front of him and couldn't help but speak. What is that? Is our mirror turned on? He frowned as he spoke, his face full of curiosity and seriousness. The captain did not listen, but looked down at the steering wheel in front of him, recalling his encounter with pirates at that time. He couldn't help shaking his head again, sighing. You don't know how dangerous my situation was at that time. When those pirates appeared in front of me, they tried every means to kill me before I could react. His face was full of seriousness. Sun Wukong nodded immediately after hearing his words, thinking that what appeared in front of him was just a mirror image. But at this time, the space pirate robbery group in front of them suddenly attacked them. The entire spaceship fell into turmoil, and the captain was stunned in place, looking at the space pirate's spaceship in front of him. The captain was dumbfounded, his eyes widened, and he took countermeasures without hesitation. But at this moment, he looked at Sun Wukong, but couldn't help asking. Someone is coming. Why didn't you tell me? Hearing the captain's words, Sun Wukong was completely stunned. He opened his mouth and said with a dull face. I have already told you just now. I asked you if this is a mirror image. You nodded. Sun Wukong's face was full of innocence. The captain was dumbfounded and could only make emergency precautions at this moment. But looking at the captain, Sun Wukong couldn't help but sigh softly. In fact, your strength level is also very bad. It's not like what you said. I thought you were more or less a talent. I didn't expect that you couldn't handle such a simple problem. Sun Wukong's tone was full of disdain. What they encountered was a group of space pirates robbing, but they happened to meet Seiki Kusuo and his group. This is their misfortune. Chapter 662. But at this time, Sun Wukong and the captain were still struggling to adjust the spacecraft to a safe state, so that the pirates temporarily thought that they were strong enough to swallow this special spacecraft whole. Seiki Kusuo, who had been planning to research new items, also stopped and looked at the pirate spaceship outside the blue round window, frowning slightly. Could it be that these pirates were out of date and didn't know the origin of their spaceships? He didn't need to think carefully. He had already had a contest in his heart. If it were in the past, the spaceship under his feet would have sounded the alarm and launched an attack long ago. Now it's still motionless, so I think there's something wrong with the cockpit. It seems that Sun Wukong's ability to cause trouble is really not something that ordinary people can bear. He thought so, but he still sighed lightly. What can he do? Even if his teammates are pigs, he has to accept it. The space pirates use the latest magnetic power amplifier, which can emit sound freely in the universe and even cause damage to the enemy. Even the Luli cannon on the ship is the latest development of the military, so they started shouting. Listen, everyone inside, you are being targeted now. If you don't surrender, don't blame us for being rude. Sun Wukong in the cockpit was still curiously looking at the pirate ship outside the window. When he saw Seiki Kusuo coming in, his eyes suddenly lit up. Can we also make the one opposite ours? Then he and I can have fun. So are you making trouble intentionally or intentionally? Seiki Kusuo could only complain silently in his heart, and then glanced at the pirate ship outside with an expressionless face. It's a pity that after meeting him, Seiki Kusuo, this group of pirates is destined to be being robbed and left with only a pair of pants. We surrender tilde. Seiki Kusuo calmly took the megaphone and started shouting. The captain next to him widened his eyes, and then said firmly to Seiki Kusuo, even if we die, we can't bow to them. I say, you old stubborn, why are you still making a fuss at this time? He must have a reason for doing this. Sun Wukong's voice was full of contempt, and he pushed the captain. Hearing Sun Wukong's words, the captain was so angry that he couldn't speak. Zero, please give flowers. He had never seen such a shameless person. It was obviously him who caused the current situation. Otherwise, how could a man who had driven a spaceship for so many years fall into such a passive vortex? The red-turbaned pirates standing on the spaceship looked at each other and determined each other's next actions. Seiki Kusuo was still in a carefree state, so Sun Wukong couldn't help but approach him, winking and whispering, how sure are you? Zero. Although he didn't spare the captain, he was still a little uneasy in his heart. After all, the pirate ship was really fierce. If he couldn't defeat it, wouldn't he be in trouble? Looking at Sun Wukong's serious look, Seiki Kusuo could only smile indifferently. Just follow my instructions. So what should we do now? The captain thought carefully and chose to believe Seiki Kusuo. There was absolute loyalty in Seiki Kusuo's eyes. Stop the spaceship. The voice was very low, but the captain immediately pushed Sun Wukong aside and started to operate it. Sun Wukong pouted and said dissatisfiedly, when I get a spaceship of my own, I want to try the feeling of being a pirate. Work. Chapter 663. The two looked at Sun Wukong. One was disappointed and the other gnashed his teeth. Fortunately, Seiki Kusuo still had some rationality and calmly walked to the door of the cabin. That's not impossible, but what you need now is to follow me and do things. You have to listen to me. When did I not listen to you? I'm waiting for your instructions now. Sun Wukong tried his best to explain. Think about how upright he is, but he actually thought that 093 was a naughty one. Everything just now was an accident, okay. Before Sun Wukong could express his opinion, Seiki Kusuo made a gesture to silence, followed by two pirates with black turbans. Behind was the red-turbaned pirate who had just shouted. He looked at Seiki Kusuo and the other two with disdain. After confirming that they would not pose a threat, he spoke to the two pirates. Watch these three carefully and maintain control of the ship. Do you hear me? Yes, sir. Sir. Looking at the standard military posture of the two pirates, Seiki Kusuo's heart inexplicably arose complex emotions. Could it be that these pirates were once military personnel? Then why did they engage in pirate activities? Could it be because the military pay is too low? Some strange things popped up in Seiki Kusuo's mind again. Seeing that the red-turbaned pirate was about to leave, Sun Wukong raised his hand to get rid of the two. Shish. Seiki Kusuo pulled Sun Wukong back and said calmly, look at the laser guns on their waists. Can they be turned on when they get close? You will be roasted monkeys later, don't you know? The two stared at each other. Finally, Sun Wukong gave up the idea of knocking out the two pirates and let go. What should I do? Look at me. Seiki Kusuo stretched out his hand, looked at the two pirates calmly, and said, look here. After a dazzling light, Sun Wukong opened his eyes again, and there were only two people lying on the ground and the beautiful laser gun in his hand. Sun Wukong was instantly excited. Is this mine? Then I won't be polite. Holding the laser gun, he couldn't let it go and almost pressed the switch. Calm down, we have more enemies to fight. You may not know how to use this laser gun yet, so I will keep it for now. You just need to use your skills. Zero. Seiki Kusuo said, took the laser gun away, and set a password. Not that bad, right? Sun Wukong secretly complained about Seiki Kusuo's precautions. He just wanted to play with new things, but who knew that something would happen? Now it's good, Seiki Kusuo may not let him go wild in the future. The captain on the side had some relief in his eyes. If he had to take care of Sun Wukong, the troublemaker, while working, he didn't know how much headache he would have. Now seeing Seiki Kusuo's attitude, he was relieved. What should we do next? Looking at the captain's inquiring expression, Seiki Kusuo pointed to the controller. You stay here and keep an eye on the pirate ship. Sun Wukong and I will go and deal with all the pirates on the ship. Seiki Kusuo was about to leave, but he seemed to remember something and reminded him, this time, swallow the pirate ship. Don't let them run away. Okay. The captain immediately began to fully control the activities of the special class ship. Sun Wukong was even more excited. Let me drive that ship, right? Seiki Kusuo turned his head. Chapter 664. What should I do if my teammates always make trouble? Waiting online, urgent. Sun Wukong knew nothing about Seiki Kusuo's psychological activities, but continued, I will not be a pirate at that time. I will take my Kiki to parade around the universe. Seiki Kusuo killed a pirate with an expressionless face. On the other side, the pirate who was greedily prying open the blue light code box was awakened. Oh no, someone killed our people. In order to prevent the accidental killing of teammates during the war, the people on the same ship installed a recognition machine. Once someone was killed, the alarm would immediately sound in the minds of others. Of course, there will be a malfunction inside Machine 06, and the wrong alarm will be sounded. But this possibility only exists 1%. The two were discovered by nearby pirates after they took a few steps. As soon as the pirate picked up the laser gun, he was killed by Seiki Kusuo alone. Holding the laser gun, Seiki Kusuo decisively destroyed it. Otherwise, if it was taken by Sun Wukong, it would be troublesome. Seeing Seiki Kusuo's operation, Sun Wukong gritted his teeth in his heart. What is this defense against him like? Is he, Sun Wukong, so scary? I'll lead the way, just look out the window. It would be too disrespectful to kill the pirates head-on, so he had to take his time and teach Sun Wukong, the naughty monkey, how to play tricks, otherwise he didn't know how much wealth the monkey would drop. But obviously, Sun Wukong didn't pay attention to Seiki Kusuo's actions, but just looked at the pirates lying peacefully on the ground curiously. What else are they carrying with them? This question successfully stopped Seiki Kusuo in his tracks, and he looked back. Sun Wukong had already torn open the pirate's clothes and took out the thing. It turned out to be a watch. There are only 5 of these in the entire universe, how did he get it? Seiki Kusuo muttered to himself, took the watch from Sun Wukong, and when he opened it, there was a photo of a beautiful girl holding a large bunch of white flowers in her hand. Tears gradually welled up in his eyes. This wouldn't be something from your fiancé or girlfriend, right? Sun Wukong suddenly spoke. Seiki Kusuo's tears disappeared instantly. He has been single for so many years, and he hasn't had any intimate contact with a woman, right? Another pirate is killed. The two of them killed everyone along the way, and soon arrived at the cabin. Seiki Kusuo kicked the magnetic door away. In Seiki Kusuo's heart, he is the best anti-theft door, and these things have no other use except to divide the boundary. There are only red-turbaned pirates inside. There is unconcealable fear in his eyes, but he is stubborn and took a few steps back, still holding on to his aura. I warn you, don't. Don't what? Seiki Kusuo took the laser gun and pointed it directly at his forehead. The one who answered Seiki Kusuo was the coward of the red-turbaned pirate. Don't kill, good man. Seiki Kusuo frowned slightly. Why does he feel like he is the robber? Another kick. Feng Qingyan said calmly. From now on, you will stay here to guard the warehouse, and come back after I deal with your brothers. Look at you. The space pirate ship had already noticed the movement, and the perspective light was turned on towards the special class ship. Calm down. Chimu Kusuo closed the door naturally, as if he was not the one who violently closed the door just now. Sun Wukong twitched his mouth. Chapter 665. Beep. Please pay attention to the crew, the enemy ship has locked our ship. Then there was a burst of sirens. Chimyu Kusuo turned his head to the window as if he had expected it, and he met the eyes of the space pirate ship pilot. Seeing that the pilot was about to press the attack button, Sun Wukong wanted to rush over to kill the man, but was stopped by Chimyu Kusuo. Don't worry. The two of them dodged and the blue shells missed. Sun Wukong still wanted to fight. It was Seiki Kusuo who had been fighting all along the way. He, a monkey, had long been eager to fight and kill. But unfortunately, Seiki Kusuo never let him fight. It stands to reason that a big boss like Seiki Kusuo should have a showdown with the pirate leader. It would be enough for Sun Wukong to deal with these small minions. Is it possible that even this? Seiki Kusuo is worried. Looking at the enemy spaceship jumping outside the window silently, Sun Wukong's mood was a bit complicated for a while. Are we just going to let him show off there? Sun Wukong's mind was full of ideas on how to kill the pilot. The answer was Seiki Kusuo's indifferent voice. Wait a little longer, wait until they are tired, and then we will slowly get on. Aren't you afraid that our spaceship will be gone? Several holes had been punched into the hull, but they were quickly repaired by the repair fluid on the ship. But the repair fluid was a small amount of stuff. If they continued to fight, the spaceship would be broken sooner or later, and Sun Wukong couldn't help it. No, I still have Chi-Chi. What should I do with her if the spaceship is broken? Sun Wukong said as he was about to jump out to fight. Seeing that persuasion didn't work, Seiki Kusuo could only pick him up with one hand, then fight. A purple light gradually condensed in the palm of Seiki Kusuo's hand, and he whispered in a low voice, Flying Thunder God technique. He disappeared in a flash. On the way, Sun Wukong still resisted a little. I am a mature monkey who used to be the king, and you are holding me like this. If it gets out, what will happen to my face as the Monkey King? You have done more than one or two embarrassing things. It doesn't matter if there is one more or one less. Chimyu Kusuo's reaction was very calm. Although he wanted the monkey to go back and accompany Kiki, as far as he knew, the monkey would never stay with Kiki. Especially when encountering pirates, which were very new to him, the monkey wanted to squeeze his head into play together. He might as well take it with him as a precaution. The space pirate ship was very large and had complete defense measures. If it were a normal ship, it might not even be able to enter the main gate. It was a pity that the person they met was Chimyu Kusuo. The doors were kicked away all the way, and Chimyu Kusuo felt satisfied before he stopped by a door and looked at the pirate beside him with a slightly raised eyebrow. The pirate was so scared that he was sweating and trembling all over. Chimyu Kusuo suddenly laughed. Would you consider surrendering? We provide food and accommodation here, and there are timely funds. Before Seiki K could finish his words, Sun Wukong rolled up his sleeves and took out his golden stick. Bang! The stick hit the wall of the spaceship. Sun Wukong felt numb in his hands. He looked up at Seiki K and scratched his head. When will this guy let him experience the feeling of fighting? Follow me. Don't be reckless. You have to learn to use your brain. Otherwise, you won't know how to break up with Kiki. Chimyu Kusuo loosened his hand holding the golden hoop. Chapter 666. Sun Wukong was still a little unwilling and wanted to fight hard, but Chimyu Kusuo was faster than him and used illusion at once. Oh my god, you are simply... Before Sun Wukong could complain, Chimyu Kusuo stopped him. What was calling? Sun Wukong seemed to have heard the strange sound and looked around curiously, but he looked left and right and couldn't see what it was. In the wall. At this time, the two of them had completely forgotten about the pirates who were still under the illusion, and just put their ears to the wall. It shouldn't be a powerful laser weapon. Chimyu Kusuo said affirmatively, looking at Sun Wukong with a firm gaze. But Sun Wukong was still very curious, and even thought about reaching his hand inside, but was stopped by Chimyu Kusuo quickly. Don't make a fuss, now we should think about how to clear these pirates. It would be best if we could take away all their advanced weapons. Seiki Kusuo said this, and took Sun Wukong aside. Don't cause trouble anymore, understand? From the bottom of his heart, what he feared most was not how powerful the pirate leader was, but how much the monkey in front of him would betray him. So he reminded again, when I use illusion, you just stay aside and don't make any small movements, understand? Don't worry. Hiseki Kusuo said these words to you, the stinky monkey, because he was worried. He stared at Sun Wukong silently for a while, and after making sure that Sun Wukong would be temporarily obedient, he issued an order to the space pirates controlled by the illusion, get all the powerful forces on the space pirate ship to the special ship. The universe that is like the Walking Dead. The pirates did what they wanted and put their weapons on the ship of Seiki Kusuo and his crew. If someone passed by at this time, they would definitely think that Seiki Kusuo was the space pirate. After all, he asked the space pirates to move things so naturally that he looked like a habitual offender. What should we do next? Sun Wukong asked in doubt. Seiki Kusuo had already had a question in mind for Sun Wukong, but now was not the time to say it. You watch these space pirates carefully, my illusion is not stable yet. If one or the other is released accidentally, he will be embarrassed. Then let Sun Wukong solve it. Seiki Kusuo thought calmly, but Sun Wukong on the side couldn't help it. This is too boring, we agreed to kill the enemy together and be passionate. Compared with the bloody war, it is naturally more artistic and ceremonial without gunpowder. Seiki Kusuo said, taking out the watch from his pocket. Looking at the affectionate look on Seiki Kusuo's face, Sun Wukong turned his face away. This was the rhythm of being seriously ill. Seiki Kusuo in the past didn't seem to be so good at arguing, right? If he knew what Sun Wukong was thinking, Seiki Kusuo might immediately refute. It's just to make up for himself, otherwise he wouldn't bother to argue with you. So the two of them just looked at the space pirates' moving weapons. Sun Wukong suddenly remembered his laser gun. Where is my gun? When are you going to give it to me? It depends on the situation. Seiki Kusuo just wanted to get over it as soon as possible. There was no way. Sun Wukong's performance on weekdays was really bad, and Seiki Kusuo was unsure. Chapter 667. Looking at Seiki Kusuo's appearance, Sun Wukong still had something unclear, but there was nothing he could do. He could only quietly step aside, muttering, really guarding against me like a thief. Seeing that the weapons on the pirate spaceship had been installed on his special spaceship, Seiki Kusuo smiled happily. It's great. Now I don't have to worry about my lack of weapons for the time being. Thinking of this, even the look in his eyes when he looked at Sun Wukong became a little gentler. You stay here, I'll deal with it. As soon as Seiki Kusuo finished speaking, he untied the illusion. Before he could say another word, he was knocked aside by a big ball of light. What is that? Frowning, Seiki Kusuo wanted to grab the ball of light, but the ball of light was not a pushover and immediately got into a fight with Seiki Kusuo. Sun Wukong looked at the ball of light excitedly. There was actually something that could hurt Seiki Kusuo. Yes, in Sun Wukong's heart, Seiki Kusuo was simply a godlike existence, but at this time, the god was beaten by a ball of light. Instantly, he was so excited that he almost cheered for the ball of light. Monkey, go and get rid of those minions. Seiki Kusuo spoke indifferently, dodging to the side, with a bit of interest in his eyes. He was also very curious, what exactly was this ball of light? Not only was it immune to his illusion, but it could also touching his own blood. Seiki Kusuo was a little dazed, how long had he not bled? Squeak, squeak, squeak. The ball of light seemed to be saying something, but before he could say more, Seiki Kusuo punched it into the wall. I don't want to listen. Squeak. Then the ball of light melted into the wall and died. Seiki Kusuo looked around blankly. Where did it go? Just gone like that. What interrupted his thoughts was Sun Wukong, who had just finished dealing with the minions and went to the cockpit. By the way, what's going on? I found that the cockpit is empty. How can a space pirate with such a powerful weapon be so vulnerable? You can tell at a glance that he ran away. Seiki Kusuo nodded. Not giving up, he looked around again, and after making sure that the ball of light was really gone, he turned around and said to Sun Wukong, then go to the cockpit and park the spaceship on the planet in front. Zero, please give me flowers, me. Sun Wukong widened his eyes in disbelief. He, Sun Wukong, was ready to go back and accompany Chi-Chi. It was a surprise. Looking at Sun Wukong's cheerful figure, Seiki Kusuo's head began to hurt again. I hope there will be no accidents. Looking at the red planet in front of him, Seiki Kusuo felt a sense of familiarity inexplicably. Before he could find out, he was patted by Sun Wukong. Okay, I have parked the spaceship, we can leave without worry. 0. Seiki Kusuo suppressed the strangeness in his heart and nodded. When returning to the special class spaceship, Seiki Kusuo couldn't help but look back at the planet. Why was it so familiar? Are we leaving now? The captain looked at Seiki Kusuo and asked. Facing the captain's questioning eyes, Seiki Kusuo could only come back to his senses and nodded gently, let's leave. On the way, the spaceship was moving very smoothly, and Seiki Kusuo sat in the soft seat and pondered, even suspecting that his memory had been tampered with. But he remained calm. Work. Chapter 668 Inches. Are you worried? Sun Wukong asked curiously. Chi-Chi on the side also cast a worried look. Since boarding the ship, Seiki Kusuo has been in a daze. It's hard not to think too much. But Seiki Kusuo just shook his head. It's not a worry, it's just a random thought. Chi-Chi and Sun Wukong looked at each other, didn't say anything, and turned their eyes to the window. Just as the three of them were looking out the window quietly, the captain's voice came. No. It's a meteorite, not just one, but many pieces. Hearing the captain's words, Seiki Kusuo came back to his senses and frowned slightly. How did he encounter these things? Seiki Kusuo quickly walked into the cockpit. Sun Wukong and Chi-Chi followed closely, looking at the meteorites outside the window as if they were facing a great enemy. If I'm not mistaken, those meteorites should be emitted from a planet, and there may have been a big explosion here. The captain said calmly, but a lot of sweat oozes out of his forehead. He was almost absolutely confident in his ship technology. But he was still a little worried. Moreover, there may be hidden cosmic storms. By the way, this should be the legendary meteorite star region. When Seiki Kusuo heard this, he thought it was incredible. Even a cheater like him would be afraid of cosmic storms. He immediately said, get up and let me control it. Remember, don't disturb me. Having said this in a hurry, Seiki Kusuo touched the joystick, twisted it to the left, twisted it forward, and the black sliding button. After some operation, he narrowly avoided a large red meteorite. What is this operation? The captain said in surprise. Even an old driver like him would not dare to drive a spaceship like this, but he actually did it directly, which was worthy of being his loyal person. The captain's respect for Seiki Kusuo increased a little more. Seiki Kusuo knew nothing about the captain's inner thoughts. He just focused on the spaceship. These meteorites are difficult to deal with. Some of them can even predict the direction where Seiki Kusuo will fly. They appear in advance, which scares Seiki Kusuo and almost hits him several times. But fortunately, Seiki Kusuo is a reliable driver and didn't let a meteorite hit the spaceship. Seiki Kusuo didn't want to fight with the cosmic storm again. He was just passing by, and everything else had nothing to do with him. 0. Soon and nervously, the spaceship left the dangerous place and was about to leave the meteorite star field. Fortunately, the boss is very capable, otherwise we will be swept into the cosmic storm. Chi-Chi breathed a sigh of relief and said with lingering fear. Indeed, the situation just now was very dangerous. There was a cosmic storm behind and a meteorite blocking the way in front. If you are not careful, you will be swallowed by one of them. Seiki Kusuo blinked his dry eyes. He seemed to have seen a woman just now. I don't know when it started, but Seiki Kusuo always thought of some inexplicable things. It feels like he is being deceived. Yes, I admire your control method just now. The captain said with a smile, and then asked Seiki Kusuo, have you driven a spaceship before? Seiki Kusuo nodded. Does driving a spaceship count? It is one of the most annoying skills he has to learn. There is no way. This universe is very chaotic, and various forces are hurting each other. It is impossible to get out quietly. The only way out is to make yourself stronger. Chapter 669. Seiki Kusuo has never doubted this. Just when everyone thought they could safely leave this star field with nothing to miss, Seiki Kusuo stopped and his eyes fell on the depths of the meteorite. Others followed his gaze and were shocked. That is, the nebula behemoth. The captain was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. This is a legendary species, and they actually encountered it by accident. But on second thought, it is not surprising that there is a nebula beast in the legendary meteorite star field. Oh 06. So the captain calmed down, and his eyes became more and more fiery when he looked at Seiki Kusuo. This young man has a bright future. He has been driving a spaceship for so many years, and it was all ordinary. As a result, when he met him, there were all kinds of opportunities and challenges. Could he be the legendary chosen one? This beast seems very strong. Sun Wukong whispered. Then he was glared at by Chi-Chi. This is a beast that only lives in legends, unlike a certain monkey who has lived for 500 years and is stupid, Sun Wukong blinked. What did he do wrong? Why did Chi-Chi treat him like this? The captain gave him a detailed introduction. As early as 700 years ago, there were legends about the nebula beast. It is said that it is a monster that has lived for 10,000 years, but no one has ever been able to get any news about it. If your mind is strong enough, coupled with the beast taming technique, you may get the lifelong loyalty of the nebula beast and use it at your will. The captain looked at Seiki Kusuo with trust. Yes, he had a hunch that in front of Seiki Kusuo, the nebula beast would have to bow down. Sun Wukong pouted. Tisk, it's just an old beast. When I travel around the universe a few more times, I can be as old as him. Before Seiki Kusuo could refute, Chi-Chi slapped Sun Wukong in the face. What nonsense are you talking about? If you are really that old, I will ignore you. Ahem. The captain on the side coughed twice pretending to be serious, and then laughed secretly. Sun Wukong looked aggrieved. Didn't you say that old beast is good? He thought you liked it, so he went towards this. You are going to develop, and you hit me. Chi-Chi still had a cold and arrogant face. That's why I hit you. Now, Sun Wukong was confused. What does it mean? Talking about those words that straight men don't understand. Then there was a kick, and Chi-Chi walked out angrily. Sun Wukong was stunned. No, I am the one who is wronged. It's strange that you can find a partner. Let me explain it to you. Chi-Chi Kusuo said helplessly. Because she likes you, so she won't let you become someone else, understand? Sun Wukong, who suddenly realized, immediately chased after him and shouted, Chi-Chi, listen to my explanation. After the two left, only Chi-Chi Kusuo and the captain were left. Before they had a good discussion about the information about the nebula beast, the spacecraft was slightly shaken by a wave of air. Not good. Chi-Chi Kusuo was the first to react. Looking at the moving nebula beast, it seems to have woken up. Chi-Chi and Sun Wukong, who were flirting, were also shaken to a halt. They looked at each other and saw solemnity in each other's eyes. Could it be the movement of the nebula beast? Both of them looked out the window. Chapter 670. Sure enough, the huge black shadow of the nebula beast was shaking outside, as if it wanted to raise this place to the ground, and severely smashed half of the meteorite star field. Before Seiki Kusuo had time to think about what to do, he was affected by this wave of air. No, this wave of air is too strong, and our spaceship's bag can't compete with it at all. The captain once again set his sights on Seiki Kusuo. In the captain's heart, Seiki Kusuo had been infinitely deified. When faced with such an uncontrollable situation, he would naturally look for Seiki Kusuo first. Knowing the captain's anxiety, Seiki Kusuo just grabbed the railing in the cockpit and said nothing. He became more interested in the nebula beast. He began to think of a way to subdue the nebula beast without confronting it head-on. What should he do to get this nebula beast? Where is the hand? It would be best if it was unscathed. If someone could hear what Seiki Kusuo was thinking, they would definitely call him wishful thinking, but unfortunately, there was only one person who admired him very much around Seiki Kusuo. A captain who would obey Seiki Kusuo no matter what he thought. Just as Seiki Kusuo continued to imagine, the vibration came again, disrupting the directional magnetic field of the spacecraft, making it impossible for the people on the ship to distinguish the direction. Chi-Chi, even at this time, I still have to say, I love you. Sun Wukong held Chi-Chi's hand and said affectionately. Oh. Did you do something wrong to get so into the role? Chi-Chi didn't buy it, but raised her chin slightly and looked at him. For Chi-Chi's questioning, Sun Wukong of course said, how can I do it? We have been staying on this spacecraft all the time, don't you think so? You mean, you can do it after you get off the ship? Sun Wukong had a headache. He could only turn his eyes to the window. Looking at the dark shadow, Chi-Chi suddenly said, maybe, my boshi has grown up this big. What? What is that? Before Sun Wukong asked, he heard Chi-Chi's voice, let's go to the cockpit, otherwise our stay here is useless. Hearing Chi-Chi's words, Sun Wukong could only suppress his doubts and follow. He always felt that Chi-Chi seemed to be hiding something from him, or the kind that could not be told. But he knew that this was not the time to ask her, and from her words and deeds, she didn't seem to want to tell him why. So Sun Wukong shook his head. Forget it, two people in love also need privacy. In the cockpit, Seiki Kusuo stared at the nebula beast displayed on the light screen. It can be seen that he was watching very attentively and seriously. The magnetic field of the spacecraft has been destroyed. The captain worried. Sun Wukong was impatient. What should we do? Are we going to stay in this hellhole? Don't worry. Chimu Kusuo said calmly, and then pointed at the nebula beast. Now, we have to see what this nebula beast wants to do, and whether it is so irritable because of the appearance of us intruders. After speaking, Sun Wukong nodded. That makes sense. So everyone focused their eyes on the light screen. Chimu Kusuo's heart gradually began to waver. This beast seems. Chapter 671. Before Chimu Kusuo could think about it, he was called back by the captain. If we don't get rid of this lost situation, we may return to the area where meteorites are rampant. Don't worry. Seimu Kusuo slowly raised his right hand. I can use the mark of the flying thunder god to feel the correct direction, and then I can make the spacecraft fly in this direction. A small ball of green light condensed in his hand. Okay. Everyone was very impressed by what Seimu Kusuo did. He is really a man who can do everything. Whether it is flying a spaceship or his own combat power, it is so admirable. There is a saying that jealousy is because the gap between the two is not big. When the other party's strength reaches a new height, there will only be worship. And Seimu Kusuo is the one who is enchanted by the person I worship. The direction of the magnetic field was resolved. Looking out the blue window, the nebula beast was still smashing the meteorite star field, as if it was venting, or playing an interesting game. Whether it was the ancient beast or the new beast, they were all simple-minded and cruel. They could treat the lives of other creatures as puppets in the game, and then exchange them for fun without feeling that they had done anything wrong. From the perspective of natural selection, these are just means to eliminate the weak, which is reasonable. Existence is reasonable. Chimu Kusuo thought carefully for a while. Should I teach this beast a lesson? It would be embarrassing if I couldn't beat it. After coughing twice, Chimu Kusuo still thought it would be better to drive the spacecraft away from the nebula beast, otherwise if they started fighting later. Stop the spacecraft. The captain nodded and quickly stopped the spacecraft in a place where the nebula beast could be seen but was difficult to be discovered by the nebula beast. I was still a little confused. Did Seiki Kusuo want to retreat to advance? At this time, he should have gone up and captured the nebula beast. Or was it that even the person he admired was not sure that he could get the nebula beast? With such a worried mood, the captain almost hit a meteorite. We currently have two options. One is to drive the spacecraft away and leave this troubled place. The other is to fight this legendary nebula beast. Fight. We finally met this beast, how can we just leave like this? Sun Wukong spoke decisively. Chi-Chi on the side had a subtle look in her eyes, and she wanted to raise her hand but put it down silently. Chi-Chi, what do you think? Seiki Kusuo put his eyes on Chi-Chi. The latter just looked at the nebula beast outside the window and sighed, stay. She and Sun Wukong were indeed in love, and she believed that Seiki Kusuo's feelings were even more sincere. Seiki Kusuo could say two options, which meant that he was still sure. What else could she do? The captain also nodded. Since you choose to stay, I naturally can't run alone. So, several people stayed in the spaceship and carefully observed the nebula monster. The captain took out an ancient notebook and wrote down everything about the nebula monster. Just when the ship was silent, the nebula monster suddenly turned his eyes to the spaceship and rushed over. The nebula monster is coming. Everyone stay alert and protect yourself. After Seiki Kusuo shouted at the top of his voice, he pressed his body tightly against the wall. Chapter 672. The captain mobilized all the weapons on the ship, trying to beat the nebula monster to a pulp, but just as he got the cannon out, the spaceship was hit by the nebula monster and failed. Can you do it, old captain? Sun Wukong was impatient. Seeing this, he almost wanted to do it himself. Because of Seiki Kusuo's presence, he didn't rush forward to operate. Seeing Sun Wukong's irritable look, Chi-Chi twisted his thigh nearby. Sun Wukong's expression suddenly became subtle, and he turned around with grievance, "Wife. Don't make trouble all the time." Chi-Chi also knew about the things that Sun Wukong had caused, especially the monkey who had caused a mess in the cockpit not long ago, and did not report the danger in time, which almost let the space pirates succeed. She felt that just thinking about it. If the husband does not teach, it is the wife's fault. As a powerful male monkey, Sun Wukong certainly let Chi-Chi do what he wanted. After all, she was the wife he liked, and no matter how much trouble she made, Sun Wukong found it interesting. You can tell at a glance that Sun Wukong is an old masochist, or the style of a domineering monkey. The captain had no time to care about Sun Wukong at this time, but just looked at Seiki Kusuo nervously. What should we do now? It won't be long before the nebula beast can attack us. The more dangerous the place, the safer it is. Seiki Kusuo said lightly, and asked the captain to stand aside and personally manipulated the spaceship to approach the nebula beast. Don't panic, everyone. After the words fell, Sun Wukong, who was originally beaten by his wife, suddenly became interested. Let me go down and fight it later. I want to see how powerful this legendary nebula beast is. He was answered by Seiki Kusuo's dull words. Then you have to be careful. Sun Wukong nodded and asked Seiki Kusuo to open the door of the spaceship. Wait a minute. Chi-Chi suddenly spoke, put the necklace on her slender neck into Sun Wukong's hand, and said affectionately, "Don't let yourself get hurt. Don't be stubborn, run away if you can't beat it, don't come back to me covered in blood like before." This scene is somewhat touching. Even the scene of how violent Chi-Chi was before ran out of Sun Wukong's mind at this moment, leaving only, "My wife is so good. Zero, please give me flowers. Wait for me." Sun Wukong finished the words gently and resolutely left the boat. With his wife cheering behind him, the blood of fighting the monster was undoubtedly heated up a little, and it was even more fearless. Seiki Kusuo looked at Sun Wukong, who was gradually fighting with the nebula monster, and touched his chin. Is this the power of love, turning a naughty and childish boy into a shining man? Zero. It really made him confused. The captain on the side could understand the feelings of Sun Wukong and Chi-Chi, and said softly, "If I hadn't been so stubborn at the beginning, I might have been like them." This. Seiki Kusuo had already doubted whether his career was right or not. Sleeping drunk on the lap of a beauty has always been the thing he despised the most, because it would numb his hard and hot heart. And now, he actually had some doubts. Should a hero be a lonely beast? Or is a beauty a match for a hero? Without thinking too much, he already had the answer in his heart. Loneliness is also a kind of affirmation of the strong. Work. Chapter 673. After Sun Wukong flashed to the opposite side of the nebula beast outside the window, he immediately opened the Super Saiyan bloodline to the maximum level that could be opened now, and fought with the nebula beast. It's just a little beast, let me teach it a lesson. Sun Wukong said provocatively. The nebula beast seemed to understand Sun Wukong's words, and roared and attacked Sun Wukong, with a terrifying 100 power in every move. But Sun Wukong was not an ordinary normal person, he continued. The claws are quite sharp, but a little ugly, a pity. The nebula beast couldn't stand Sun Wukong's various words, and a large beam of light was spitted at Sun Wukong to express his inner anger. The three people in the spaceship saw that the nebula beast seemed to be stimulated by something and attacked Sun Wukong crazily. Seiki Kusuo was the first to react. It seems that this monkey's mouth is still so irritating. The tone was indifferent, as if it had been expected. The captain suddenly realized, no wonder the nebula beast suddenly rioted and strengthened the air wave force in the vacuum. Only Chi-Chi looked at Sun Wukong's figure with great concern, pursing her lips slightly. I want to go out too. She was really too worried about Sun Wukong. What if he died? What would she do? They had discussed widowhood and divorce. There was only widowhood, not divorce. Seeing Chi-Chi's anxious look, Seiki Kusuo stopped her. Let Sun Wukong gain some practical experience, and then I will take action. Otherwise, this monkey is too capable of causing trouble, and he can't always rely on the help of others. The captain said that he thought so too. Looking at Seiki Kusuo's indifferent expression, Chi-Chi was also slightly relieved. Her trust in Seiki Kusuo was stronger than that in Sun Wukong. So the three continued to watch the battle outside the window. I didn't expect it to be so strong. Sun Wukong was slapped away by the nebula beast and hit a small meteorite, with a trace of bright red blood slowly flowing from the corner of his mouth. He originally thought that no matter how powerful the nebula beast was, he, Sun Wukong, could fight for 300 rounds, but it was knocked out in less than 5 rounds. Sun Wukong was still a little surprised that this legendary species was too powerful. Seeing that the monkey who had just provoked him was beaten and stopped making trouble, the nebula beast snorted coldly and spit fire at Sun Wukong. Just when Sun Wukong thought he was going to die, Seiki Kusuo arrived in time and rescued him back to the spaceship. Seeing that the creature he wanted to kill was taken away, the nebula beast sent out a strong air wave, almost opening the door of the spaceship. Dead monkey, are you back? Chi-Chi hugged Sun Wukong with tears in her eyes. With a muffled groan, Chi-Chi looked at Sun Wukong worriedly, are you okay? Where are you hurt? Sun Wukong forced out a smile with great effort, no, just superficial injuries. Chi-Mu Kusuo, who was standing next to him, shook his head. It was obvious that his bones were injured. After being hugged by Chi-Chi, it would be strange if he didn't feel pain. He is a patient man who can laugh even in such pain. Be careful next time, or I will have to remarry if you die. Sun Wukong. Before anything happened, my wife prepared for my funeral. What should I do? Wait online, urgent. Looking at the two of them, Chi-Mu Kusuo decisively entered the cockpit. Chapter 674. Seeing that the nebula beast was about to fight again, Chi-Mu Kusuo opened the door of the cockpit and fought the nebula beast himself. It seems that you still have some tricks. Chi-Mu Kusuo spoke indifferently, looking very bold. Although he said he would not spare the beast, he secretly sent a message to Sun Wukong and the other two. I will hold him back, and you guys take the opportunity to drive the spaceship away, otherwise I will have to divert my attention to protect you. This message was true and made the three reluctant to leave. After all, the nebula beast was so powerful that even Sun Wukong could not beat it for a few moves, and the difference between Seiki Kusuo and Sun Wukong might be just a little bit. 06. Seiki Kusuo's behavior was simply to take his life to cover the rear. How could they just abandon him and run away? But thinking that the strength of the three of them seemed to be a burden, they were all observing the movements of Seiki Kusuo and the nebula beast while touching the remote control of the cockpit. Roar! The nebula beast suddenly shouted, followed by various attacks on Seiki Kusuo. What's wrong with this day and age? One is more worthy of a fight than the other, and this human who is against it really makes the nebula beast angry, and it can't do anything to him. Seeing that the nebula beast had transferred its anger to him, Seiki Kusuo took the opportunity to lead it away. It was really a difficult species, worthy of being a legendary creature that had lived for tens of thousands of years. Talk about the beast. The nebula beast didn't care about how Seiki Kusuo felt, but just followed him with hatred, cursing in his heart. Damn guy, dare to do this. Seiki Kusuo led the nebula beast to the vicinity of the meteorite star field, far away from the spacecraft. Looking at this place suitable for fighting, Seiki Kusuo no longer concealed his strength, and beat the nebula beast fiercely, with extremely cruel means. But the nebula beast was not a vegetarian, dodged Seiki Kusuo's attack at a fast speed, and also interfered with Seiki Kusuo with a hot laser wave. It's really difficult. The man and the beast fought very fiercely, constantly destroying the surrounding meteorites and making a huge noise. Human, you are very good. The nebula beast suddenly spoke. The voice was very low, and it was also a kind of affirmation of Seiki Kusuo. In response to the words of the nebula beast, Seiki Kusuo just chuckled. Same here, as a beast that has lived for tens of thousands of years, you are also very powerful. Human, you are very young. The Nebula Beast spoke again, but the laser in his hand still launched a decisive attack on Seiki Kusuo. Seiki Kusuo just smiled and continued to fight with the Nebula Beast in full swing. On the other side, after seeing Seiki Kusuo get rid of the Nebula Beast, the captain wanted to catch up immediately, so he put his hand on the joystick. 100 inches, I said. Are you in a hurry to be a hostage? Sun Wukong pushed the captain away and drove the spaceship to a farther place. Relax, he will only bully the Nebula Beast. He and the Beast have fought for more than 10 rounds just now and he is still alive and kicking. Don't worry about it. The captain, who was originally a little angry, suddenly lost his voice. Yes, there. God will definitely teach the Nebula monster a lesson, and they will only distract him. So, the captain can only watch the spaceship leave at the speed of light quietly. I hope there will be no accidents. Chi-Chi said worriedly. No. Chapter 675. Sun Wukong said gently and continued to control the spaceship. And Seiki Kusuo was still fighting with the Nebula monster. His sweat slid down his cheeks. He thought to himself, no, it is impossible to get rid of the Nebula monster if this goes on. His physical strength has almost reached the limit of weakness. So he began to think about how to keep the Nebula monster in the meteorite star region, even if it is a short stay, it is okay. The Nebula monster seemed to know Seiki Kusuo's physical strength and magic power very well, and even strengthened the attack. Seiki Kusuo gradually became a little tired. Just when he felt that he could only run away, an idea came to his mind. It seems that I can try space ninjutsu to seal the Nebula monster here. Once this idea came up, it was hard to suppress it. With a flash, he dodged the fierce attack of the Nebula monster again. Standing on the big red meteorite, looking at the Nebula monster, Seiki Kusuo raised his hands. Lotus Seal Diaresis. Then, a large purple formation appeared under the feet of the Nebula monster. Under the Nebula monster's unbelievable eyes, a large group of vines emerged from the purple formation and tightly entangled the Nebula monster. Roar, roar, roar. No matter how the Nebula beast roared, it was useless. After all, Seiki Kusuo was not a pushover. For a powerful opponent like the Nebula beast, he could not always go head-on. He could only do something sneaky. As the purple light of the formation became brighter and brighter, almost blinding people's eyes, the Nebula Beast's shadow disappeared from the place where it was originally. Seiki Kusuo secretly breathed a sigh of relief. I was really afraid that the Nebula Beast had something that could break his formation. Then he left without any more nostalgia. After using his magic power to find Sun Wukong's location, he immediately followed their route. Finally, he saw the shadow of the special class spaceship. Fortunately, the monkey did not cause any trouble. The boss is back. Sun Wukong suddenly shouted, and immediately opened all the doors. The Nebula Beast is not following behind, right? As he spoke, Sun Wukong looked behind Seiki Kusuo again and again. Seiki Kusuo got on the spaceship and breathed a sigh of relief. I have sealed it up. If nothing unexpected happens, it will not be able to come out for a while. We should leave this place of trouble as soon as possible. After hearing Seiki Kusuo's words, Sun Wukong perked up the next second, no longer relaxed, and adjusted the speed of the spaceship to the maximum ratio. I certainly have the idea of fighting the Nebula Beast, but after thinking carefully, I think it's better to forget it. Our lives are more important. As Sun Wukong spoke, he was suddenly stopped by the captain. You drove into the cosmic storm. Everyone saw that the spaceship had been caught in a cosmic storm, and it was relying on the spaceship's special defense tools to hold on so that everyone did not lose balance. Don't look at me, how would I know there would be a cosmic storm in such a place, and it came from under our spaceship, I am innocent. Sun Wukong said confidently. This was not the time to educate a monkey, so no one talked to Sun Wukong. The captain seemed to have thought of something and said, there is another possibility, that is, something is following our spaceship, and it is about to show up, so there is a cosmic storm. Bow.